Have you ever been in meditation, breathwork, or a powerful spiritual moment, and instead of feeling expansive and connected, your body's just shut down? And we can easily view this as failure, even when it's not. What it actually is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Um, I've had this happen to me in spiritual practice where you're doing like this deep meditation and you expect bliss and this joy, this overwhelming feeling. But instead, I felt heavy or numb or disconnected. And at first, I thought I was doing something wrong because, that's how we humans are wired. But over time, I've been studying my nervous system and regulation, all the somatic practices that I do. And I've learned that this is actually a really common response. And so in this video and this episode of Reflections of the Sacred Self, I want to explain why your nervous system might shut down during spiritual practices, how to spot the signs, and just 3 simple ways to support your body so you can experience depth without the overwhelm. So if we think about this spiritual shutdown paradox, what we expect when we go into our spiritual practice, we're doing like a long, deep breathwork practice, or we're doing a really deep meditation. And the person teaching it has explained all these possible things that you could experience. And that might be bliss and like light or transcendence, or these like tingling sensations in the body and all of these wonderful things that they go into. So you're there thinking, I'm going to feel all of this, and you're really excited about it. But then the reality happens and you feel blank, maybe nothing. You're just there and there's nothing happening. Or you feel numb. So you almost can't feel, like you can't feel anything that's happening because you're numb to your feelings. You might get really tired, so you just want to go to sleep. And you're trying to get this deep experience, but you keep like wanting to nod off. Or you might just feel really overwhelmed by the whole experience. And what happens is we tend to then equate this with spiritual failure. We're no good at this spiritual work. We can't meditate. And this is the kind of thing when you experience that, people will say, oh, I'm just no good at meditation. But in reality, what you're actually experiencing during these moments is a nervous system regulation pattern. And when you can recognize that, then you can start to shift things over to get them the way that you want them a bit better. So to explain it, you've got the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagal nerve. And they basically come together. The autonomic nervous systems, you've got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and you've got the dorsal vagal. And they come together through the vagus nerve and the branches within that to regulate yourself during extreme stress. And when you're doing a spiritual practice, if what you experience, actually what starts to come up is really strong. So let's suppose you have energy rising. So if you were doing something that was bringing the energy up, okay? So we're doing something that's really going to activate your energy. It may be too much for your body. So your body will interpret that as overwhelm and as of something to be dangerous, scared of as well. And it may not even be that much that's happening. It's just that it's not what your body is used to. Because our nervous systems are very much linked to safety. And safety comes in what we know. And we all know that we've all got our comfort zones and we're very safe when we're in there, and we go outside our comfort zones and we don't feel safe. And so when you're doing a spiritual meditation, you're starting to open yourself up to things and you're going beyond your comfort zone, your body and your nervous system may not feel safe. And so that will send a message through the vagus nerve to the brain. And essentially what the vagus nerve will do is put the brakes on what's happening in your body. So it will slow everything down. So essentially, when you put that brake on, you bring the heart rate right down. Okay. And everything comes a bit quieter. So if you think about this in the freeze state, so we're going into that dorsal vagal state when this overwhelm happens, because that's how your body is determining what's happening in that situation as a way to deal with it, to become safe, is to maybe to shut down and to freeze and to go into that collapse state. So the vagus nerve is putting that brake on and it's slowing the heart rate right down. So that's going to make you feel more tired. It's going to make you feel more numb. You're just going to kind of go down like that. And that's how you're actually going to feel. And so it will feel like you've had all this arousal, but the body can't deal with it. So it just totally downshifts and shuts everything down, because it thinks, well, okay, listen, this input that's coming in is just a bit too much. If we just shut everything down, we don't feel that input because we're shut down. Really? a lot. And obviously the whole point about the heart rate going down is when you're playing dead, you want your heart rate and your breath rate to be as slow as possible. So your body slows everything down. So you're basically numbing yourself out. And that is actually what the nervous system is doing. And that's due to emotional input. So, and often when we're doing spiritual work or you're doing deep breath work, there can be strong emotions that come up. Like or if you're doing a yoga practice, a really somatic yoga, and you're really stretching into the fascia and the muscles and you're really releasing stuff, you can then release too much. And rather than allowing you to feel those emotions, because your body's like, whoa, what is happening here? It just shuts everything down, because that's the safest response, because you can't run from an emotion and you can't fight an emotion in the same way. It's not a physical threat. So often we will shut down. And part of the problem with this is actually a lot of spiritual teachers and centers and people that are all around that spiritual life, they glorify big highs. So they kind of, you're expecting that you should be shaking or crying or feeling this bliss or having these amazing breakthroughs. And so what you're actually doing is, well, at the same time when you're going into these meditations, so it may not even be that you're experiencing anything. It may be that the shift is going to be very gradual and slow, but your brain is stuck in the should trap. I should be feeling this and I should be feeling that, and this isn't happening for me, and why isn't this happening? So you're kind of stuck in this trap, and that can actually cause an overwhelm as well and a shutdown in and of itself. And then you're shut down, and then you carry on in that vein of mind. Well, I'm shut down. I must not be spiritual enough. I'm not doing this right. There's something wrong with me. And we get into that loop, and that actually amplifies the shutdown, because we're adding to the negative patterns that are going on. Whereas actually, if we kind of switch to the other mindset of, actually, my system is protecting me. It's not betraying me. It's keeping me safe. And that's something that I should be really glad about. I should be really proud of my body that it can do that. And knowing that you take your time to do it. So I actually, one of the very first times that I did a spiritual meditation, we were going really, really into, like, there was a small circle, we're going into it. And I actually started to go into trance. And it was very overwhelming for my body. And I came out of it, and we were doing all this lovely spiritual meditation, and I was like, I can't get back. I could not bring myself into a deep state, because something lifted me out of it, and then I couldn't get there. And it was really frustrating. But when I came out, and I didn't know I was going into trance, right? I knew I was going deep, and then I came out, and then I couldn't get back in. But the person who was teaching me was like, you were going into trance, and if you hadn't come out yourself, I would have pulled you out anyway, because I was going too deep for what I could actually cope with at that time. But my body naturally responded and stopped me from going deep and kept me protected. And that often might be what is happening when you experience these things as well. So when you do experience a shutdown, there are different ways in which you can deal with it. So the first thing is trying a grounding or micro reset. So before or after or both a spiritual practice, you can touch your body, so you can feel the sensations in your body, so you're connected to your body, and just gently touching yourself, right? And it can be just really gentle, just feeling the sensations in the body. And you can wiggle your fingers and your toes. And you can look around the room, make sure you know where you are. So if you've been in a meditation, you can come out and you can orient yourself back into the room, okay? So you are connected to where you are. Because often when we go into spiritual meditation, we disconnect from the body and the reality. So coming back into that body and feeling what's happening, that can help to bring that safety straight back. And then you can sort of like titrate the work in. So when you do big practices, so if you have the opportunity to do a long breath work or a long meditation, it may actually be too much for your system to cope with in one go. And so looking at doing shorter breathwork practices or shorter meditations, so you're not pushing yourself to the point where you're actually overwhelming your body. And I discovered this quite a lot when I was doing TRE, which is trauma release exercises, where you make yourself shake. And if I was doing it for too long, it was so overwhelming for my system that I couldn't cope with it. And so it's actually saying, okay, well, what can my system cope with? And can I bring this back and work with my system and not just work with what people think I should be doing? And then you can, when you do these practices afterwards, you can work on gentle integration. So you can journal what came up for you, drink plenty of water to keep the body hydrated, and you can even go for a little walk or move around so that you can shift the energy in the body and allow anything that needs to be released to actually be released physically. And this will allow the body to digest your experience instead of storing the overwhelm, so that next time you go into a practice, you're ready to release a bit more and it becomes easier and easier. And give yourself permission to pause. So validate that stillness or numbness as part of the process. So it's okay to feel this. This is part of the healing journey. And as I progress, I will move through it. And it's just allowing yourself that permission, because sometimes we don't, and the pressure we put on ourselves to make it in a different way and to do it in a different way actually causes a lot of the problem as it is anyway. And just remembering when you're doing this, when you're doing spiritual work, it isn't always fireworks. And sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's gradual, sometimes it's shut down. And all of these responses, they're all valid and they're all absolutely fine and part of where you are right now. And it's not a right or a wrong or a good or a bad. It's just part of the journey. And just knowing that you can actually reframe these things as your body not blocking your spiritual growth, but partnering with it. And it's showing you where your edges are and keeping you safe. Because if we didn't have that brake mechanism, we may push too much and we may overwhelm or even re-traumatize ourselves by bringing too much up in one go. And just remembering that if you are doing breath work with people, if they're not, and I would include myself in this as well when I'm teaching breath work, I'm not a trained psychologist, so I'm not working with you as a mental health professional. So you may release trauma, and it's about developing that personal responsibility that if stuff starts to come up, you can allow yourself to pause and to breathe and to reintegrate before you release more, because you have to understand what your system can cope with as well. And if you're doing, say, breath work online, and especially if it's groups, the person teaching it is not going to be able to monitor where you are emotionally and physically and responding to necessarily what they're teaching. And so it's about understanding where you are and allowing yourself to come out of something if you feel you need to. And I had this the first time I did, there's lots of breathwork practices where you breathe in through your mouth, which is counter to the calming. So you're breathing in through your mouth, so you're triggering kind of a bit of a sympathetic nervous system response to allow you to release, and then you bring back down. But the first time I did this, I hated it. It made my skin crawl. I just couldn't stand it because it was just too much for me to handle at that time. And it was releasing, like my body couldn't, it felt all wrong in my body. I can do it a lot better now, but it's understanding where you are and taking that responsibility. And I stopped. I didn't finish. It was a 30-minute practice. Like, I can't do 30 minutes. There was no way I could have done a 30 minutes, and it would have been torture on me. So I didn't do it. And that's not a failure either. If you take a step back and do it at your own pace, it's where you are. And just bringing that awareness to it, understanding who you are and what you need and how you move yourself through those things will make a huge difference to how actually quickly you get those deep practices, because once you work with your system, it's much easier to then develop that deep connection because you are allowing yourself to grow at a pace that works for you. So that's it for today. And if you found it useful, remember to like and subscribe so you get all my lovely videos in the future. And if you would like to connect with me on a deeper level, and you can join my community on School, which is called The Sacred Pause. I'll drop the link in the comments, and I would absolutely love to see you there. But if not, I will see you on the next episode of Reflections of the Sacred Self.